Hello everyone, welcome. I am Sergia Louise Anderson and the host of the Instagram Lupit Pole Instagram interview series. Today we're going to be chatting with Dani Winks. Super excited. She is a part of the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit, which actually starts this Wednesday, so make sure you go to her link in bio and check out that event and get your free ticket. Both Dani and I and 25 other amazing speakers will be speaking everything beginner pole dancing, and it's a free ticket, so grab it. I'm about to bring Dani Winks on right now. She is a contortion extraordinaire, and please give us all of your questions when it comes to all the bendy things. So let's go ahead and bring her. She's coming to us from Minnesota, and she made her way into pole dancing through circus. Hello, Dani. How are you?
Hello, doing good.
So happy to have you.
Likewise, excited to be here.
Yes, everyone always has all the questions about contortion, and I know it's your specialty, so I'm super excited to chat to you today. All the back bendy and split stuff. In fact,
all of the flexy things.
All the things. In fact, I know that at the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit that's coming up on Wednesday, you have a bunch of freebies to check out on splits, right? So everyone that like right now, you know, hush hush. If you actually get your free ticket, head over to that Meet the Speakers page, and Dani's freebie is sitting right there underneath her bio for you to grab and to use to get those splits. Which splits training is it that you're offered there?
The free one in my bio is for front splits. It's a 20-ish minute routine for front splits, and it's really focused on active flexibility and total transparency. After I made this PDF, which links to all these videos and descriptions of the exercises, I was like, shoot, I should totally charge for this. So in the future, I will be charging for this, but for everyone who gets into it as part of the Pole Dance Summit, gets it for free because you're all lucky.
There you go. This is your chance. If you get into that summit, you actually get probably going to change your mind on offering that as a free resource. So go grab it now. Anyways, how is everything going? I know we have questions from people about splits, about backbending, but first of all, before we get into it, tell me, you actually made your way into contortion and into pole dance through a Groupon, through circus, right?
This is my favorite story, because especially with contortion, which everyone just assumes like, oh, you must have like been a noodly gymnastics child all your life and like started at age 6. I'm like, no. I got into circus arts from a Groupon. When I was 22, I had a Groupon for like aerial silks. I was like, wow, that looks so neat. I'd love to give it a try. Tried it. Obviously loved it because silks and aerial arts is super fun, and I really liked it. And I was like, well, I want to see what other classes the circus studio offers. So they had contortion. I was like, oh, you know, I think yoga is pretty neat. I've kind of done yoga off and on before. It seems like that, but a little bit more interesting, and was like totally hooked because contortion was everything I loved about yoga. It's got all of this flexibility challenge, and it's really goal oriented towards like doing things that look really cool. And unlike yoga, there's lots of ego in contortion. Like the whole thing is it's a performance arts, and it just totally clicked with me, and I got obsessed and have been doing it ever since. And then after doing contortion for about like 8 or 10 years, then I kind of got into pole, mostly over COVID, because I was like, well, I want like a new apparatus to learn, and pole is something I can learn at home. So fell in love with pole, and you know, the rest is all history.
Yeah, contortion and the pole is just such a beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, great combination.
Yeah. So tell me, were you kind of flexy naturally before you, or when did you realize did you that, or was it really working through the contortion that was there any?
It's a little bit of both. I can't deny that I have more back flexibility than the average person was. I remember like when I was little, I've always been able to touch my feet to the back of my head, which is way more back flexibility than most people have. And is like something a lot of people start contortion with, like one of their goals is to be able to touch their toes to the back of their head. And that was something I could always do. But I wasn't like obscenely flexible beyond that. I couldn't really do the splits. And it was just so much of taking classes and training that just, you know, opened up everything beyond that.
Awesome. Yeah. So once into pole, tell me a little bit about how you have seen your contortion help your pole practice.
Yeah. A lot of it is one of the things that's nice is like a lot of, at least the cool pole moves that I really like are the ones that are really flexy. We were adding splits and adding back bends and grabbing your feet and stuff. So one thing that was really fortunate for me when I started is I had that base level of flexibility. So once I got more of the upper body strength to get myself into the pose to begin with, adding the flexibility component was a piece of cake because I already had that, which is not the journey that most people have when they start pole. Is as they're progressing, they need to continue to work on their flexibility and their strength and their skill and all of this stuff at the same time. But having a little bit more flexibility to begin with, then I could progress a little bit faster, which was more fun for me.
Absolutely. I know. I'm actually, you know, after having my daughter and kind of getting back into training and getting my studio back up and running after the pandemic and everything, one of the things that's on my list of things to do is to really put more attention towards the, like, you know, the contortion training, the strength behind the contortion training before I even go back to hitting the pole super hardcore. Because I'm like, what would it be like if I put all that time into strengthening in those really flexible positions before I even got back on the pole? I wonder if this would be just a completely different experience, you know, going back into training on the pole more rigorously after that. So I'm almost kind of like, maybe I should put contortion at like the fourth.
Yeah. And when I've taught classes both for contortion and for kind of like beginner floor work flexibility at the pole studio that I teach at, it's a really nice complementary discipline because yes, obviously you can do all of your amazing flexy things on the pole in the air, but there's a large portion of performing pole choreography, if you choose, that's floor work. And there's so much stuff that you can pull from contortion to apply to using base work where you're actually holding onto the pole, or doing floor work where you're not on the pole but transitioning in between in choreographies and stuff like that. And it just gives you so many more options than what you might already even be aware of or comfortable with working with the pole, which I really love.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just interesting because like when I started pole dancing, you know, a long time ago, like, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, you know, I was in it for the pole dancing, and I always remember getting into positions and then working really, really hard to add the flexibility to that, right? Like getting to like, ooh,
and like trying not to die at the same time.
I just, now that I'm in here and holding my body, now I want to make a really cool shape out of it, and then working so hard for that. And I'm like, what if I approached it from the other direction for once, just for fun to see, you know? Yeah. I feel like it's a completely different experience. So I'm excited about that. I have some questions that were posted for you that I wanted to cover, make sure we got to. Backbreaker B posted, are your hips allowed to eventually open in deep over splits? And I know this is a nuanced question, so have fun with that one. Go.
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's funny. Someone asked this on Reddit very recently because square splits are a very hot topic, and I've been posting about it on my own Instagram a lot. I'm a big proponent on, like, our default generally should be squaring the hips because it's a better stretch for our hip flexors. It's safer to add back bends and stuff too. It doesn't mean it's the only way to practice our splits. The nuance when we start to talk about over splits comes a little bit in, well, first of all, what's your goal? Why are you working on your over splits? Are you doing your over splits because you want your regular cold splits to be flatter, or to be able to like get better flat splits in the air? In which case, like, it's okay for those to be unsquare, but really practicing them when they're unsquare, even if they're an oversplit, is still technically cheating the flexibility stretch component of that drill. The whole reason we generally want to keep hips square in splits, over splits, and even things just like lunges and regular half split hamstring stretches are because it gives our muscles the deepest stretch. Our hips generally unsquare and tilt to the side because it's an easier position and the muscles don't have to lengthen quite as much. So if you're looking for flexibility acquisition, keeping the hip square, even though it is harder, is the better goal. And also with over splits, the deeper we start going, the more our hips start to tilt forwards a little bit. I can show a little bit on the floor. And normally, if we're doing a split, you can see that our low back arches just a teeny bit. And the higher I start taking both of my legs, I'm going to be getting more of an arch in that low back. And generally, we don't want our hips to be twisting to the side when our low back is arching, because then it is no longer just an arch, it is a twist, and that's a lot of compression and pressure on the low back. So the generic safest thing is to always be keeping our hips square. So in over splits, both because it's better for our hip flexibility, but also it's safer for the small amount of back bend that starts getting added as well. I wouldn't say that means you could never do it that way, But from like a general best practices, probably better to just aim for square all the time.
Working your square split, then your split in the air, even on the pole, is going to be deeper and look deeper. And then if you're trying to go for that aesthetic and you're in that square split and you open the hip and you want to go a little bit more, then hey, that will even go farther. So might as well practice them square on the floor so that
exactly. And that's super applicable to things like a jade, where we get one hand that can help to pull one leg a little bit closer, but that back leg is just all active flexibility trying to flatten our split, which is a lot easier to get it perfectly splat when you've got something like over split. So having that more active open split's a little bit easier, but you could totally unsquare your hips in a jade. That's safe. You can turn out that back leg. Those are great things to add more of the illusion to having your splits look a little flatter when maybe they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheat them once you get in the air, but train them square.
Yes, yeah, that's a great best practice.
Okay, cool. I've got another one for you. All right. Blood, Sweat, and Silks asks, oh, well, what will be your next venture artistically or professionally?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I guess a well-timed one, because about a year ago-ish, at least a year ago from February, is when I had like quit my day job, and now I'm doing flexibility training and pole training full time, which is really, really cool. I'm super stoked to be able to have this be like my regular big girl job. And now that I have all this time, I'm always like doing things like doing more workshops, adding more stuff to my website. I think one of the probably like professional teaching things that I'm most excited about is I'm adding a whole section to my website called the Flexipedia, which is just this huge ass online database of stretches grouped by muscle area. So you could look for hamstring stretches and then look for ones that are active, ones that are passive. And right now it's frankly mostly an information dump. I'm just using it to house all of my videos. But over time, this is something that I want to use to be building stretching routines off of that people can get and things like that. So really when I do any private training with people, I usually pull videos from this section of my website to help them build custom training plans, which is really cool. But all of the videos, or at least currently a lot of them, are still accessible. So you could just kind of skim through them now if you're looking for different ways to stretch, which is cool.
Yeah, I know. Getting all that amazing content organized on the back end, so it's like when people land, they know what they're looking for, and then they can go get it. Yeah, love that.
Right. One of the things that's kind of the double-edged sword about flexibility training is, on one hand, there is a lot of free information on the internet about how to get the splits and how to do stretches and all of that jazz. But on the other hand, a lot of it is garbage. There's still so much, like thousands of YouTube videos for getting the splits that are just passive stretches, which is like the least effective way scientifically to try to get your splits. It's not wrong. It's just going to take you way longer than making sure that you're strengthening your muscles and doing all the stuff that I'll be talking about more in my session in the Congress this week. But yeah, so I'm hoping that having all this information in one spot is going to make it a little bit easier for everyone to kind of build their own stretching routines if that's the direction they want to take with their training.
That is awesome. I love that. Okay, and your favorite thing about contortion, Mina Rochelle asks.
Oh, I think it's always, and this is kind of what got me super hooked on it from like the get-go when I started in my early 20s, is for me, I find it a very goal-oriented discipline, which is also one of the things that really attracted me to pole, is that there's like always this physical, like a trick or a skill that looks really cool that you can work towards doing. And there's like very concrete steps to break it down. And if I want to be able to do a handstand with a split in it, I have to be able to have the shoulder flexibility for the handstand. I need the core and the shoulder control to be able to balance in the handstand. I need the leg flexibility to do the split. And I need to be able to combine all of those things together. So I can train all those components separately. Once I can finally combine them and do the skill, cool, I learned to do a neat thing. There's like 7 other variations that are even harder, even cooler to do, like shooting a bow and arrow with my feet while I'm in a handstand, which is a thing that I'm working on right now. So there's always like clear goals to work towards. And as soon as you can do that thing, there's something even cooler that you can do, which is very much how I'm motivated. I like having to-do lists and tasks. And once I can do something, there's something else I can do from there. I just think it's super cool.
I love that. Yes, limitless. And
yes, very much so.
Well, actually, yeah, you can, it's nice to have a tangible thing that you can check off, right? You can be like, yeah, I did that. I did touch my feet to my head. Yeah, I did nail that trick or whatever. So that's cool. for people that are like really want those dopamine hits, you know?
Exactly. And it's like, I finally got my flat front splits. This is so exciting. And I always encourage people to have like unflat splits or unsquare splits can totally be on your goals. Like, can you get touchdown any way possible? Awesome. Let's celebrate that, because that's not it. It's still challenging to do. But once you can do that, let's work on the square splits. Once you got your square splits touchdown, let's work on an over split with a block under the front leg. And you just keep going from there and forever.
And then the free presentation that you're going to be giving at the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit this week, what is it and what are you covering?
Yeah, so my session's all about training for flattening splits, particularly the front splits. So we're talking about kind of an overview of the anatomy of what muscles we need to stretch and also strengthen. Spoiler alert, that's a huge part of the presentation to getting the front splits. So I've got some diagrams with my friendly little friend over here who's Pelvis Presley, who I use in a lot of my Instagram posts to break down like what are the muscles that we're actually using in our front splits, so you can help visualize that in the body. And we'll also be talking a lot about kind of best practices when it comes to flexibility training in general. So that way all of the people who attend can get an idea of how they should be training. I've got that freebie that you can all get right now if you sign up. That's the list of kind of a 20-minute-ish routine that builds off of all the fundamentals of things I'm talking about, what muscles you should be strengthening, how often you should be doing it, making sure you're training both the front and the back leg kind of thing as part of the routine, but like at least give you something to start with, and then you should know enough from the presentation and then tailor your training to whatever works best for your body. One of the other pieces is really kind of covering some of the most common mistakes I see students make when they're trying to be working towards their flexibility, particularly students who've never really done any kind of dedicated flexibility training before. We talk a lot about square hips, but other things as well. So for anyone who is like new to adding flexibility training to their workout regimen or pole regimen, this is a really great kind of session, even if you're looking for things like back and shoulder flexibility, because all of this applies to that as well.
Wonderful. All right. Speaking about, I just know that it's just such a hot topic. I mean, obviously back bending is such a hot topic. Talk to me a little bit about shoulder flexibility. That's something, or just shoulders in general when it comes to pole.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, well, I could talk about shoulders for hours, and there's a lot of other instructors I love following on Instagram who are part of the Pole Summit who are also super knowledgeable, that you should just honestly just follow everyone in the summit on Instagram because they have so much great stuff. But shoulder flexibility, and as it relates to pole, is really interesting. One of the biggest challenges, like the cool thing about our shoulder and the challenge, is it's a ball and socket joint, just like our hip, but unlike our hip, the socket is really, really shallow, which on the plus side, that means our shoulder is super duper mobile. It can move in all sorts of directions and allow us to do all sorts of crazy things and grab the pole a different way. The downside is because it's so mobile, that means it can be a little bit weaker. And we have a couple of different muscles in our shoulder, the 4 rotator cuff muscles, that are, their job is to help make sure that the upper arm is sitting in the socket of our shoulder and that our shoulder blade is moving around where it's supposed to help our body go through these ranges of motion without going in a place that it shouldn't be and dislocating our shoulder or anything like that. So shoulder flexibility in general is really, really tied to also strengthening the muscles in our shoulder, particularly the rotator cuff muscles, to make sure that we can safely go through these ranges of motion and we are not just pulling our arm into the deepest stretch possible, because that is not sustainable. And that's how we get things like shoulder injuries, especially in pole. Usually when people have a pull shoulder injury, it's something in their rotator cuff, one of those really small muscles that help with shoulder stability, that just tore and wasn't quite strong enough for whatever it was they were working on.
Yeah, such a balance, making sure that you have that flexibility in the shoulders, but also, strengthening the muscles and knowing which muscles to strengthen.
Exactly.
I know. Gosh, I wish there was just someone who made a program to make sure that you could take care of all those things. Oh, wait. You probably have one of those.
Yes, I have. I have. It's like in addition to all of the cool stuff I'm doing with the Pole Summit, I have my whole website, DaniWinksFlexibility.com, and I teach regular weekly classes. My backbending classes Tuesdays at noon Central Time, and there's still room tomorrow if you want to hop on in. And we talk a lot about this, like safe strengthening for our shoulders, for our back. We break down backbending flexibility kind of through what we call the whole backbending chain, which includes the front of our hips, our low back, our upper back, which for most people is the part that doesn't want to bend, and our shoulders. I've got a bunch of downloadable recordings on my website for folks who aren't able to come to live classes, but they're kind of broken on different subjects. I actually have a shoulder workshop coming up this weekend at 12 p.m. Central Time on Saturday. I'll have to double check. But yeah, I've always gotten flexi stuff going on, either live classes or in recordings on my website.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm actually got the strangest situation with my back bends is like I have a really decent amount of upper back, but zero lower back.
Yeah, so that is definitely rare, but there's a lot of students I work with because most flexibility programs are catered to the average body, where everyone dumps all their flexibility into their low back and has a hard time working with their upper back. But I have worked with a handful of students who are the same situation you described. And so it's learning that, yeah, okay, your upper back is great. Let's focus on making sure the low back feels safe, feels supported, because one of the challenges with our low back is it's just the lumbar vertebrae. At least our upper back, they have the ribs and some other structures and other muscles that help distribute some of the weight and the physical pressure of where the bend goes. In our lower back, we don't have any of that. So much of getting more of that low back flexibility is strengthening our core, strengthening that low back, and making sure our hip flexors are as open as humanly possible so that we can rotate our hips to get the most out of our low back.
Definitely hip flexors and lower back, like those I need to focus on. Yeah, so I'm super dive into your stuff. So I know that you also have a special program that is in the upgrade. So if you go to the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit and you do get the Pole Performer Success Pack upgrade, you have goodies in there as well. What are those goodies that people can access right now?
Right. So for that, if you kind of watch my session, you get the front splits training program and you're like, wow, this is great. If only we had this for middle splits and straddles, that's what's in the upgrade. So it's one of those PDFs. It's a 20-ish, it's a little bit longer. It's probably closer to 25 minutes. Stretching routine that targets our middle splits and our straddles, which for pole dancers is really nice because there's lots of cool middle splitty, straddly shapes that we can make, like being able to invert into a straddle, like being able to slide into your middle splits on the floor, and things like that. And those require flexibility in different muscles than our front splits do. So we have a whole separate training routine that you can do for that.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited. This is a great week for you and I to be chatting because we're about to offer this awesome summit. So everyone go to Dani's link in her bio and go grab your ticket to the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit and get training with Dani because she's got so much good information. I'm actually really excited to have some time after the summit to actually really dive into all the amazing resources that are in there. So again, thank you for joining us, Dani.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Thanks everyone for listening and watching, and hit up the Facebook group if you've got any questions. I've got a post in the Facebook group for the summit where you can ask me other questions that are split related to my session, but I'll be kind of monitoring and chatting as I see people ask stuff.
All right, fantastic. All right, Dani, see you at the summit. Take care.
Yeah, bye everyone.